All right, I'm here for episode 145 of the Yoga Pod or the Yoga Pod podcast. See, that's how many podcasts I do. I don't even know what podcast I'm doing of 4Ever2Wheels podcast. And I'm here with Maria Morris, who I only knew as Yogi Harley
Chick.
Yogi Harley Chick on Instagram. It's one of the amazing things about social media is that you get to connect with like-minded people. I have no idea how I stumbled across you.
Cycles.
Yeah, it was either yoga or motorcycles. It was one of the two. And I follow a fair bit of people. And typically it's just kind of, but I was like, I'm into what you're posting because it's so in line with kind of, I do a lot of yoga and I do a lot in the motorcycle industry. So it just seemed like a great fit. And then we connected and I really wanted to have you on and just kind of see what your story was about how you got into motorcycling and then also your best ride. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you got into motorcycling.
Okay, well, the funny thing is, I mean, you can tell by my accent, I'm, originally from the UK, and none of my family ever rode motorcycles. In fact, I didn't even have any friends that rode bikes. And I think from an early age, I was about 17, and I would just buy tons of tattoo magazines, bike magazines, and I can't even tell you, I just loved reading those and flicking through them. And then life happens.
Sure.
I had some kids, I got married, and I kind of forgot about it, but it was always there. And 10 years ago, I moved to the States and decided then that I was going to learn to ride.
Sure.
So I think what happens, I can say for myself, the weirdest thing is, I think if it's in you, it's just there and it's something that you're meant to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I feel like, I didn't have anybody in my family that rode either. I had, I think I had a few instances in my life that were very profound when I was young. I remember I was vacationing with my family in Italy, and there was a woman that was trying to get us to take a ride on the back of her scooter. And I really wanted to do it, but I was too scared. Like, I think I was 11 or 12 or something. And I was like, and I think my brother did. He doesn't ride motorcycles. And then after that, I went to college in Colorado where I currently live. And a friend of mine's friend came out, had ridden out from Maryland. And I was like, I've got to do that. Like, he just looked like the quintessential biker. I was 17, 18 years old, and he had that quintessential biker look. And, there's people that have listened to this podcast have heard this story a million times, but I was like, I want to own a Harley someday. And he was like, cool. And he went outside and he came back inside and he put his hand on my forearm. He grabbed my forearm with a greasy hand and like rubbed the grease into my arm. It sounds so cliche, right? And he's like, oh, you're going to be a biker. And I was like, whatever, and less than a year later, I had a motorcycle. So
it's crazy how things happen. But I got so many people telling me, don't do it. You're going to kill yourself.
For sure.
You need to set an example. I am setting an example.
Totally.
I really am, just in a different way to what other people think it is, So I don't know. It's something that I'll always do. I was destined to ride. I ride.
Sure.
And that's it. That's how I came to it.
And you live in a very sunny place.
Yeah, Florida, which helps. Even though it's rainy season right now, but I'll still go out and ride, And to be honest with you as well, COVID-19, horrendous. But I've coped quite well with that. But these past couple of days, it's really rained here. And that's had me climbing the walls. Able to get out on the bike. So.
It's a form of therapy, and I think that's where I think people, we need to talk about yoga a little bit, right? This is primarily a motorcycle podcast, but you'd be surprised how many people from the motorcycle industry that have reached out to me that I'm now like doing private yoga instruction with over Zoom. And because, I've been in the motorcycle industry for probably 20 years now. And they know me and I've always been into fitness and did a lot of endurance sports and kind of blew up my body. And I had a friend of mine who walked me into a Bikram studio and said, "Hey, this is the answer to you not being able to run." And I had Achilles tendon surgery. I blew up my Achilles. I couldn't even run after my kid in the yard, And so I got introduced to yoga, and I have not looked. It has been the most consistent thing in my life for the past, whatever it's been, 7-8 years, for sure.
So you've been practicing a fair time as well. How long have you been a teacher?
So I guess just a little over a year now. Yeah. And it's been great. It was not my intention at all. When I went to teacher training, and then, it just so happened that the studio that I was at really liked what I was doing, and they gave me a position to teach kids. So I started off by teaching youth athletes. That's kind of my passion, I guess. And being able to get kids moving in a way, I realized, my teenage son couldn't touch his toes. And I'm like, you should be able to touch your toes. And then I was like, oh, none of your friends on you, like, you guys are supposed to be elite baseball players and you can't touch your toes. Like, what's wrong with you?
You're too tight from all the lifting and the training. That's what that is.
Exactly. Yep. And so and now I have, probably 50% of the classes I teach are kids, youth athletes, specifically, not like little kids, but, athletes that want to get better, increase mobility, increase strength, flexibility. So,
what I found though, I don't know about yourself, but for me, continuously practicing yoga, I practice every day. And I love vinyasa. I do teach that, but I really lean towards Ashtanga.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that's helped me on the bike, no ends. It's just helped me kind of become more one with the machine. And it's really hard to explain. So I do think bikers definitely need to take up yoga. And yoga is faint-hearted.
I agree. And I think a lot of people have a very different perception of what yoga is, right? Than what it actually is when you get in there and you actually do a class. And it's like, this is really hard. And I 100% agree with you. I think that they go hand in hand, because I've done a lot of, and I think I just talked about this on a previous episode, but I've ridden 1,000 miles in a day a few times. Yeah. And there is nothing better than doing a little, modified cat-cow while you're riding. And yeah, I mean, you can literally like move around while you're in the saddle. And I don't feel great after riding 1,000 miles. Nobody does. But I feel okay. Like I'm okay the next day. I'm not like, crippled.
I think that's because yoga opens your body up.
Sure. And strengthens your core, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's so easy to just kind of like slump and, ride. And then it's a lot different than like, and you obviously can't, engage all the bandhas while you're riding or anything, that's not going to be good. But there's something to be said for that, for being mindful of what your body is doing in space on a vehicle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with that. So what did it look like when you first started riding? What were you riding? Did you take a course?
Okay, well, I did. I took the course. I'd never been on a bike before. I hadn't even been on the back of anybody's bike, and I still haven't to this day. And I actually have no intentions of. So I took a course, a weekend course. I was the only female. I was pretty terrible, I'm going to be honest with you. And
did you ride a bicycle previous to that?
Yeah, but not much.
Not much. Okay.
No, and so yeah, I did this course, and one of the trainers, he was picking on me quite a lot actually, and I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. And I remember just thinking, I got up at 3 a.m. on the last day, And I just sat there and I'm reading all my notes and thinking, I'm going to pass this. And if I pass this first time, I'm going straight to Harley Davidson the next day and I'm purchasing a bike. So I ended up straight in Harley Davidson the next day and I purchased a 1200 Sportster. Now I was told not to do that.
I would tell you not to do that as well. Okay.
So I had the bike for 6 months and then I upgraded and I think I ended up with a Softail Deluxe then, and she was gorgeous. Oh my God. She was just so gorgeous. And that's the bike that I went to Key West on with a group of girls. So much fun.
Awesome. And I want to circle back to something that you said, which was when you were growing up, you were reading tattoo magazines and bike magazines. What bike magazines were you reading?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. I just pick any of them off the shelves. They were all American ones.
Okay. Yeah, Hot Bike, American Iron, Street Chopper, The Horse, all those. Yeah.
About the memories. Yeah, I don't even know what I did with those magazines either. But it's funny because, like I said to you before, nobody that I knew was into bikes or tattoos. So it must have just been, who knows, maybe it was a past life.
Yeah, totally. Well, and it's the same. There still isn't anybody in my family that rides. I am the only one. There's been nobody, as far as I know, all the way back, that's ever ridden a motorcycle.
I don't know what they're missing though, do they? That's the thing.
No, it's a funny thing, and I've had this kind of fantasy about, my older brother and I going on a ride together at some point. And I'm like, he's not, he's 50. He's not going to start riding anytime soon, like I'm going to have to save that for my brothers and sisters that ride, like that. And they're happy to get on and ride. I think my next big adventure is probably Alaska is what we're talking. So
it's so cool.
Yeah.
I have yet to do all of those. I really want to go and ride around Utah, Arizona, those places.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah. I've got an article that I wrote probably 2 or 3 years ago, riding through Utah, a part of Utah that I had never been through before.
Right.
That it was literally like, how did I not know about this? Like I've ridden back and forth to California so many times, ridden to Arizona, ridden through Utah, and never ridden through that part. I mean, it is breathtaking and so worth it. I did it in a car last year because my son had a baseball tournament, and I was like, not even close to the same experience. It's just not the same.
I've done it all in a car, but I'm yet to take my bike, just get my bike over there and just go and ride. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Maybe
so worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it. So what bike do you have now?
I have several. So my main...
Listen to you.
I know. Well, better than purses.
Yeah.
Okay, so my main bike is a Street Glide Special.
Okay.
15. Has lots of modifications on it. I jump on that bike every day.
Sure.
I also have a Dyna Y Glide. That get very much saddle company. I have a shovel head.
Okay.
70 shovel head. And I also have a Triumph Scrambler.
Okay.
Which is really
cool. Yeah, that's a fun bike.
Yeah, really fast as well. But I'm always Street Glide. So
yeah. What's the shovel head like? Is it a custom bike or is it pretty much stock?
No, the engine and that's it. The rest is kind of like,
Cool.
The rest is all customized and what have you. It's really cool, actually.
Yeah, I can't wait to see pictures of it.
I will. Well, I need to get them all out. That's the thing. But every time I go in the garage, I'm like, okay, which one? The Street Glide.
Yeah, it's the easy one.
Yeah, GPS, music,
sure.
Your saddlebag. So that's the one that I go to all the time.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense. So let's talk about favorite ride. It doesn't have to be one specific ride. It could be a couple rides if there's something in there. But what is, in your mind, what is the best ride that you've been on?
The one that comes straight to mind is Key West with a group of female bikers.
Uh-huh.
And it was just so, well, there's just something about roaring down the road with a group of girls that are not afraid of, they're not afraid to get their hands dirty, basically.
Sure.
And it was that, just the scenery, we'd party, we had the most amazing time. It was just great.
Sure. So what year was it?
I think we did that back in, when was that? Must have been about 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Okay. 2015-ish.
Because I was, in fact, maybe 6 years ago, because I was on the Softail Deluxe then.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. And where'd you start?
Miami.
Okay.
So it's not really a long ride.
Yeah.
But
so you start in Miami, and then where do you head to? I know that there's a very long bridge, right?
7 Mile Bridge.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's literally a straight run straight through to Key West.
Yeah.
Really flat.
Uh-huh.
Very beautiful, but it's extremely flat and can get a little bit boring. So it's just one straight road to Key West.
Uh-huh.
Amazing. But the scenery, you've got the ocean on either side, and that 7 Mile Bridge, to go over that is just spectacular. Just the views going through there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've never ridden on that. It's been threatened. I have a friend who lives in Homestead, who keeps trying to get me to come down there, who owns K&G Cycles down in Homestead. George Maracas.
Yeah, I think I've been there, and Homestead's not too far from me, actually.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good guy. I helped him start his internet company, K&G Cycles, years and years and years ago. But anyways, that fascinates me, and also is a little bit terrifying. Do you get paranoid at all being on a bridge for 7 miles?
No, not at all.
Natural disaster, tsunami. I guess if that's supposed to happen, it's going to, right?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I just live in the moment when it comes to like that. I just appreciate, and you should know that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
In the moment, I enjoy every single second of what's going on. And I do think like that. Maybe it's the wrong way, I don't know, but if something's going to happen, it's just going to happen.
That's true. Yep. Yeah. And I think taking a motorcycle safety course, I can't recommend it enough. I didn't do it that way, but I think it's the best route for people, because you really understand how much of a defensive rider you need to be in order to not get hit.
Especially in Miami.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Not well known for the best drivers here. So if you can ride in Miami, you can ride anywhere, trust me.
Really? Interesting. That's cool.
Ask your friend, he'll tell you.
Yeah. So how long does it take to get from Miami to Key West?
I think it took us around 5 hours, and that was with a few stops as well.
Sure.
Off, have some drinks.
Sure.
Just kind of chill, and so about 5 hours.
Okay. And then how many people were there? And it was all women, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I have done that trip a few times with a group of women and guys, but this specific trip was just women. And I don't know, it was just so, like, when you meet people that are the same, they have just the same interests as you. And like I said, there's not a lot of females that I know personally that don't mind getting their hands dirty. They'll on the floor, they'll do, and to be with a group of women that was like that was just a really amazing feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that I don't know what it is, but I don't really like riding in a group particularly. I have some friends that I'll ride with. I have one friend in particular that I would ride anywhere with, because we just seem to have the same pace, mindset, whatever. And I've led a lot of group rides, charity rides, et cetera, et cetera. But there is something to be said about like getting in a group. Like we do the Why We Ride to the Quail every year. Okay. From LA up to Carmel. And it was canceled this year, unfortunately, but that ride is probably the only like really big, and there's like over 100 bikes typically on it. that I really enjoy doing, because it's like you said, it's that like-minded. It's hard to find people that are just there to ride, right? And just there to have a good time. And there's no ego. There's no like, hey, look at me, you know, all the things that we come up against, even in like a yoga studio, right? Like we see all those same things. It's not any different. You know, it comes out on the road, it comes out on the mat. It's all those things.
So true. I 100% agree with that one.
And it's interesting as well, like in a yoga studio for me, like with, you know, yoga studios are typically populated by women, right? I mean, it's 75 or more percent of the population that go into yoga studios. And so for me, like the bond that I have with like the fellow male teachers at the studio and students is really different than what I have with the women. Like it's because I feel like we're just like simpatico, you know? Yeah. And it's that same sort of thing that you probably feel on the bike, right? Like they're opposite in the same, you know?
Well, that's it, because the girls that I went with, they were riding their own bikes. You know, I know women here, and I'm not judging, of course I'm not. But, you know, a lot of them don't ride their own bikes, and, you know, they're always riding pillion, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But when you're with a group of women and you are just tearing up the road,
sure,
there's nothing better. And you know, we're not dressed. You've seen my page, so you know, I'm dressed properly when I ride a bike, and that's another thing as well. I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit of a tomboy, and these women were also the same as me, so it was a really memorable trip. And then we stayed the weekend, parked the bikes up, you know, went out partying till like 4 a.m, dancing. It was just amazing. I want to do it.
That sounds like every night in Sturgis, basically. Party till 4 a.m.
You want to go to Sturgis? I haven't been yet.
Oh yeah, well, if you do, definitely look me up. I've been there, going there for 20 years. Got all the inside info for sure.
Oh, I'll DM you.
yeah. I haven't missed a year in 20 years. So, and I think I'm only 350 miles from there. Oh. So that's the thing. You know, people don't realize how close Colorado is to South Dakota, but it's not far. Just go through Wyoming and you're right there.
I've been to Wyoming as well. Well, that was in a car. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, but I mean, you get the idea. It's a lot of wide open space, you know, and that's, for me, what I love to ride.
Yeah.
And, you know, but the other side of that with Florida, right, is that there's amazing riding in Florida. You just have to find kind of that, you know, like even the loop in Daytona. I've done that.
I've been to Daytona as well.
100 times maybe, but it's a great ride. Like I never get sick of that ride, you know, through like with all the Spanish moss and everything. And it's all,
so gorgeous.
It's really pretty.
I think for me as well, like now bar hopping doesn't cut it for me either. I can't get on a bike and go up the road. I'm not interested. Now I just need to do a long ride. I always go, if I ever have the time and I want to go out somewhere by myself, I always hit the Everglades as well. That is stunning. The Florida Everglades. And there's a place on Highway 27 called Cafe 27, which is like a biker's bar. And I'll just go there by myself, pull up, have a drink, and that's great as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's there. I think there's so many parts of this country that we as riders, like that sounds so appealing to me that I've never been to. Like I've ridden in Florida every year for the last 15 years, probably twice a year going to Daytona and Biketoberfest, right? I miss them occasionally, but I'm there pretty much all the time. Never ridden through the Everglades.
Oh, you've got to do How can you not have done that? It's honestly, I go right out into the Everglades and then I will just stop the bike, park up, and it's like you're in a different world.
Sure.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to do it. Yeah, I want to do it for sure.
So make sure you DM me when you're here.
All right.
We'll go riding.
Yeah, I want to hit Key West. I want to go to the Everglades. So the one thing that does freak me out, and tell me if you've ever heard of this happening. So I've spent some time in Daytona, and usually there's some late nights there, and I'll be riding, on the loop because it's just easier, and I don't really want to go on the highway back to Daytona from Ormond Beach. And I always imagine that there's going to be an alligator lying in the middle of the road that I'm going to run over. Do people run over alligators in Florida?
I'm sure they do. I've actually gone over. What did I go over? A huge crab. So, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure they do, but it's just you get used to things, It's like you get used to it.
Yeah.
You're really good with your swerving and you kind of go around it.
Sure. That's funny. Yeah. I mean, it's the things that we think of, right? Late at night while you're riding and there's, all you've got is your headlight. So
these turtles as well.
Really?
Yeah, I've nearly gone over one of those, but I actually missed it, which was good.
Yeah. So tell me about did you guys have any trials and tribulations on your trip down to Key West? Anybody break down?
No.
Flat tires, problems?
No, nothing like that. Because we always make sure our bikes are looked over before we do any of these trips. And
Sure.
In all fairness, it wasn't really that long of a trip.
Yeah. How many miles do you think it is?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I just know it was about 5 hours. I don't even put the speedometer. I'm just like, I don't care. I'm just going to go. So I don't know.
And when you talk about being properly geared up, can you tell our listeners what that means to you? I really appreciate that because I think it's super important. It wasn't important to me when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, it's definitely become really important to me when I ride.
Okay, well, I'll always wear a full face
Mm-hmm.
Because I definitely don't want that smashing up. Always a leather jacket.
Mm-hmm. No matter how hot it is.
No matter how hot. Because the way I figure, first of all, I live in Florida. It's always hot. It's just that summer, it's excruciatingly hot. Like I said before, I don't mind getting my hands dirty. So if I sweat and I've got a dirty face and everything's all disgusting, I also don't care because that's part of the ride.
Sure.
Always boots.
Mm-hmm.
Always gloves. Leather gloves. Sometimes I can be a little bit lax on the trousers, so if I do come off that bike, I'll most probably have a lot of road rash on the legs.
Yeah.
But I think I remember when we went there, I wore leather chaps.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I was fully geared up then.
Yeah. Leather chaps are an interesting thing too, because really what you're going to end up most likely with road rash on is your ass. And that's not what chaps cover, right?
So true.
I mean, it's like your hips and your ass are the things that are gonna, when you roll, are gonna hit, and they don't do anything for that.
I'm kind of thinking that if I come off mine, I might end up going like that.
You might. Hopefully not. Let's not do that. Yeah, let's not do any crashes.
And I've dropped my bike, but I haven't had an accident yet. There you go.
Yeah. And so I've ridden for a while now. I don't know. I guess I'd have to do some 30, is that right? Yeah, 30 years. And I've had one accident, knock on wood, and it was in Florida. It was in Florida. Yeah. And I got rear-ended by somebody, another motorcyclist.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. He was high on prescription drugs or something. And
goodness.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, it ended up, it could have been a lot worse. I actually heard him lock up his bike behind me, and I was on like a custom bike that I had just got built, like probably a year before, or that year, because it was the first year that I had it. And so I was sitting at a stoplight, and he came up behind me, and I heard him lock up his brake, and I looked in my rearview mirror right before he impacted me. And so I actually jumped off my bike as he hit me, because if I had stayed on my bike, he would have hit me right in the ankle. Wow. Like the front of his bike would have hit me right in the ankle. And then he tried to ride away, and I was with, actually, you know who I was with? You're from Miami, so this might not go over well, or it might go over just fine. I was with Ami James from Miami Inc.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah. the tattoo artist, and he went up and he's about to beat the shit out of this guy. He pulled the keys out of his bike and was like, "Where the fuck do you think you're going?" It was pretty funny.
Temper that one.
Yeah, a little bit. He's a good dude. I like Ami. But yeah, and so luckily, like I was fine. The bike was a little messed up. What's that?
Did you hurt yourself?
No, I got hit in the back by my sissy bar when I came off, and I just kind of rolled off. I wasn't wearing a helmet because I was in Florida, and I was dumb, and yeah, it all worked out. And then I just rebuilt that bike. So
yeah, I always wear. First of all, as well, I don't want to ruin my tattoos. That shouldn't have been the first reason that I gear up. I don't want to ruin my tattoos. We've taken a lot of time and effort and patience and money. So
yeah,
I like to cover myself, or don't like to get too much sun.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like I said, as I've gotten older, I've realized, and as I've seen countless people go down, I mean, you ride enough, you see people go down. You go on enough rides, you see people go down. And it's unfortunate, but like when I lead a group ride, I usually start it with somebody in this group most likely is going to go down.
Yeah.
Don't let it be you because you're doing something dumb, you know? And so I've seen that over and over again. And I've seen what happens with, and I've done some track days, and I've seen what happens when people have proper protection on and what happens when they don't, you know? And so now I'm the same way. Like I'm like jeans, leather jacket, the whole thing, you know, full face helmet. You know, I never ride without a full face helmet anymore.
I also think as well, I don't mind riding in a group. In fact, I mean, I'm part of an organisation, but I'm actually taking 6 months off right now because I'm doing my 300 training, you know,
Sure.
Training for the yoga, and I can't give the time needed to the organisation. And we ride in a really, really large group. But I've learned to ride staggered, pretty close to everybody else and staggered. And I find that works for me as well. But I always know as well, these people, like you said before, there was one guy, he's left now, he's actually left Florida. And I always would position myself at the back of him because I just knew how he handled his bike. I
Sure.
kind of knew what he was going to do. So I think gearing up. I also think making sure when you do go out on a ride that the people you ride with know how to ride in a group.
Oh yeah. It's one of the things with motorcycle rallies, right? Like with Sturgis, Daytona, the big motorcycle rallies, a lot of people, they only get their bikes out one time a year, right? For that rally. It's their big hurrah. And so that's where I usually see people, you know, like dropping their feet 40 feet from a stop sign, and they're like, you know, got their feet off their pegs while they're coming up. I'm like, oh geez, this is going to be a problem, you know? And you know, I've seen people go around corners like they're on a dirt bike with their foot out. I mean, all sorts of crazy things where you're just like, really? And now it's to the point, especially with like protective gear, you know, I got my daughter like a little dirt bike, and we finally got it running, and I think I had shorts and tennis shoes on, and I like rode it down the block, and my daughter was screaming at me like, "You don't have a helmet on, you don't have pants on, what are you doing?" You know, just like screaming at me. I'm like, it's the right thing to do. You're exactly right. You know, I'm like, I'm going 4 miles an hour, but you're right. So good for her.
Hey, and good you're starting them young. I like it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see whether they actually get on it. She hasn't ridden it yet, not through any fault of her own, but yeah, we'll see what happens. So, do you have any aspirations of other places that you want to ride?
I want to do all over the US.
Yeah,
You do. Of course, now, I mean, my children, they're older.
Uh-huh.
I still have one at school. He's in high school. So I'm going to wait until they go off to college.
Sure.
That is it. I am going to
And you're like, I'll see you later.
see you, bye. And I just want to travel. I want to travel on my bike. I just want to, I don't know, just some sense of adventure, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And do you have any specific plans? Are there places that you're like, these are the places I have to go? Or do you have any inspiration? Is there somebody that you're like, ooh, you know, like I've been checking out blah, blah, blah on Instagram or whoever, you know, that you're like, oh yeah, I wish I could do that.
What I definitely want to do, I want to go to Babes Ride Out.
Okay, cool.
I want to follow as many liters as possible because I know they do that, don't they? They do
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I want to do Ride Out. And I'd really love to teach them all like a yoga class there as well. So
that is cool. Yeah. And I think I was just talking to somebody who's doing a motorcycle rally, and I think there's going to be a lot more of that. I think post COVID, there's going to be, I think motorcycle rallies are going to look really different. I think people are going to be a little more okay with health.
right.
You know, and wanting to, and being okay. You know, I mean, I remember, you know, going to Sturgis, 15 years ago and running at the campground and people being like, what are you running from, man? You know, at 7 a.m, they're still drunk from the night before. And I'm like, hey, cool. You know, like right on. But I think that there's and that's what I've seen, you know, by posting, you know, a lot of yoga, a lot of motorcycle stuff, is that there's more acceptance about that now than there has been previously. You know, there really was kind of a like, you know, a bike, and it's weird. I don't really consider myself a biker. It's very strange. Like, I don't know how I could be more of a biker, but I guess I look at, like, there's people I know, like Bandit, who runs BikerNet. Like, that dude's a biker. You know, like, I know him. He's the founding editor of Easy Riders magazine, you know, like,
He lives that life through and through. That's what you're trying to do.
Totally. And I'm like going to yoga and like wearing my mala and like doing my thing. And I'm like, you know, I like riding motorcycles. I don't know. Like, biker seems like a bit of an overstep for me. I don't know, you know, but
it's really funny because people ask me, what do I class myself as? And I don't really know.
Yeah.
No, sometimes biker. Will I say motorcycle enthusiast? No, I'm not going to use that. In fact, no, I'm a biker. I'm a biker. I ride a bike. I ride it every day. Sometimes, sometimes far. That makes me a biker.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you, and it makes perfect sense. And I don't know why I'm, I don't know why I'm hesitant with the moniker, but I am. What's that?
Interesting. Why you won't put? I mean, are you labeling yourself? I don't know, but why you just won't call yourself a biker?
Yeah, I don't know. So let's talk about yoga a little bit, or a little bit more. So you're in your 300-hour training.
I am.
Cool. So you did your 200-hour.
Yes.
It wasn't enough, and you said, I need more.
You know what it was for me? Like you, I didn't go into it to be a teacher.
Uh-huh.
Into it because I was interested and wanted to dig a little deeper. And the gym that I belonged to at the time, they didn't offer any yoga. So it was arranged when I finished my training that I would teach a few classes there. So I went straight into it. So I don't know, maybe I finished my training on the Saturday. I was teaching like the week after.
Awesome. That's the way you've got to do it. In my opinion, like, you can't take any time off from training you just got to jump in the deep end and go, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. And you figure it out on the mat.
So true. So true. But for me, doing the 300, I wanted to go into the philosophy side a lot more. I also wanted to understand the body a lot more well. And that's what the 300's given me. And it was just I thought, if I'm going to teach, I want to be able to give the student everything.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Not just put them through a sequence. I want to understand. I want to help them understand themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, that's one of the most important things, is that by getting people on the mat, if we can get them there, right, then they get to have whatever experience it is. And if they come back enough, right, and they start to have that discipline in their life, things will change. It will get different for them, whatever that looks like.
Different for everybody.
Oh yeah,
definitely changes you.
yeah. And I always say, like, let the yoga do the work, right? Like the yoga will change you, in whatever way that might be, not just physically, but, perhaps emotionally, perhaps spiritually even, there's so many different facets to it. And I think that's where motorcycling also has that same thing, right? Like there's people like you and I who are super passionate about it, right? Like it's way more of a metaphysical sort of experience, right? And then there's people that are just like, I got a bike in the garage, and they go ride, and that's cool. And I think it's great for everyone, it's great for all of them. Same thing with yoga, right? Some people just go there for the physical asana.
Yeah.
Right? Like they want a good stretch, and some people go there for like so much more. And it's cool that we can meet them wherever they're at.
I think, what's happened for me though with riding bikes, I need to ride my bike. That's the difference. I need to ride that bike. I walk out, I look at it, and every single thing melts away.
Sure.
If I'm on my mat, or if I'm in a philosophy lecture, I get the same feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened for me, the yoga, is, of course, it's put me in touch with myself a lot more. So being on that motorcycle, because we all have different sides to our personality.
Yeah.
Motorcycle is true freedom, and sometimes it could be a little bit too much freedom. So what the yoga does, it brings me back.
Yeah.
Need to be, and grounds me a bit. So it's a real true case of yin and yang.
Yeah. No, that's a great observation. And I don't know that I've looked at it in that way, but I very much agree, because, there are times I think where, and I always joke with my guy friends, at least, like everybody's got an Alaska, which is just like, if I had to just say fuck it and leave, like that's where I would go. Right. Right. Like, so, and maybe women have it too. I don't know. But like when things seem a little too much, I'm like, Alaska, I can just fucking go to Alaska and I never nobody ever sees me again.
Isn't it so weird how you've just got that? Because that's what I meant. Sometimes I can go into that garage, I can look at the bike and I can think, okay, I'm going to get on that and I'm just not going to come back.
Yep.
So, of course, you just can't do that.
No.
And that's what I'm saying. The yoga has helped me to balance that side of myself out, because I will go over the edge a little bit there. Yeah,
for sure. Yep. And I totally, that makes a lot of sense to me, at least, it makes a lot of sense, because there are times. And the other thing that's fascinating to me, and it's very similar, is that I can go in, I'll just take this morning for a good example, right? Like, so I try to practice every morning. I happen to get up way too early this morning. I was up at like 3:30 this morning because I couldn't sleep and I didn't want to practice, and I did it anyway. And I felt different afterwards, right? I was like, oh, when I get done practicing, I'm going to go back to bed. I'm just going to go back to bed. I'll wake up, we'll do the podcast. I didn't go back to bed, right? Went through the movement and did what I needed to do, maybe drank a little too much coffee, and
sound just like
me. And I'll be fine, And the other side of that is I can go get on my bike, kickstart it, feel that like, oh, I just got this thing started on my own power, right? Go out, go over the dams, which is just up a little way, maybe take a 15 or 20, it doesn't even have to be that long, right? And something just, it's the same sort of thing. It just recalibrates me, right?
Oh, do you know what? I just can't believe how blessed we are
Oh yeah. Yeah.
To be able to feel all of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think there's something also about not being enclosed, right? Like being out and feeling, you know, all of, Mother Nature passing by, however, hippie that sounds. It's true, like there's something to be said for like putting your bare feet on the earth or in the sand or in the ocean or whatever, but there's also something to be said for being out there in the elements. Yeah, maybe I've got a helmet on and a leather jacket, but I'm still feeling all those, and you're smelling all those things, and it's just
And not just that, I think you've definitely got to have your wits about you on a bike. So yeah,
yeah,
it's like the minute I get on that bike, it's like stepping on my mat. And I wouldn't say for a vinyasa class, but more Ashtanga,
mm-hmm.
heightened, something switches on and I go into myself. And it's like being on the bike, I'm into myself, but all of my senses are like the radar's out there. And I don't know, that's what I need. I like to take myself to the edge on a lot of things.
Sure.
I'm not sure whether that's a good or a bad thing.
Non-attachment, right? It doesn't matter.
So maybe that's why I have found a love of Ashtanga as well.
Yeah.
It takes me to the edge, and then I ride a street glide, which is a pretty big bike, and I get
Mm-hmm.
the comments from that all the time. Oh, you're such a small lady and you ride such a big bike. So yeah.
Well, and Ashtanga is such an interesting practice, and I go in and out of it. Um, of doing It's really difficult for me to do virtually. I don't know why, but I have a hard time, even though we have great teachers, and we've got it 3 times a week, first thing in the morning. It's a difficult thing, but for me, when I get there, like going into the studio and doing it first, I love doing yoga first thing in the morning. That's my thing. Yeah, it feels, and I feel like Ashtanga is that, like that is the practice for the morning. For me, like it's just too much first thing in the morning. Like I'm more of a middle of the day kind of, if I'm going to do hot, or at least mid morning, because that first thing in the morning is just like such a blast to the system. But Ashtanga, the way, and for people that don't know what it is, it's a set series, and there's a few different series of Ashtanga. You probably know way more about it than I do, but it's it's a very energetic practice. There's a lot of, but the thing that's nice is that it is repetitive, right? And so if you go to that, and it is something that a beginner could go to, and there are modifications that they could do,
Definitely use modifications. And, my teacher allows blocks and different things like that. It's not so much like the old school way it was.
Yeah.
If you can't get into one asana, you just can't move on to the next for life.
Sure.
She will give you modifications, let you, use things to help you to get there. But I really enjoy it because I find it very challenging.
It is.
Because it's challenging, it helps me to focus more inward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, I just like bending my body all over the place as well.
For sure. One last question. So tell me about your fascination with Harley Davidson. Like, obviously you said you've got a Triumph, but you've got 3 Harley Davidsons. Okay. So I think that's a really, do you have any Harley tattoos?
Not yet. I was actually going to get a Suzuki.
Okay.
And my husband's like, Maria, you live in the US, get a Harley Davidson. And that's where it started.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I just love them.
Yeah. It's a very specific thing, like Harley Davidson is a very specific, it's a specific brand. It's got a specific message, it's very different than Suzuki, or Triumph or Royal Enfield or even Indian,
Really in all fairness, though, I like any bike.
Yeah.
What I have, and I have a really, really, really good relationship with where I get my bikes from. And there's also a guy here that builds some of the bikes for us as well. He's also great. He's Eric from House of Thunder USA, a really great.
Okay.
So that's why I go back for the Harleys all the time. And I know these bikes that are lighter or more, they don't break as much and but I just like them. Sometimes
Yeah.
explain something. You're just drawn towards something.
Yeah. One of my favorite custom motorcycles in the world, and he's also a great human being, Warren Lane, lives in Miami. He's got a company called Atomic Metalsmith.
Where?
You should definitely follow him on Instagram. Vintage bikes are his thing. He is Billy Lane from Choppers Inc. He's his brother. And he's such a good dude. And he builds some of the most beautiful custom bikes ever. And I know a lot about custom bikes. I mean, more than the average person, and his stuff is just above and beyond.
Well, I'm going to DM you after this, and please, all of the links and Instagram.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm excited to post on the YouTube channel. I'll put up some pictures of the trip, of your bikes, of you doing yoga, all the things, so people can see that. And then where can people follow you, see more about you?
Well, I'm in the process of organising a website.
Okay.
Running in the next 1 or 2 months. Just my Instagram page.
Okay.
Who wants to DM me? I get back to everybody. I'm not one of those messages.
Okay. And it's Yogi Harley Chick.
Yeah. Yogi_Harley Chick.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been really fun. I'm always like a little trepidatious about talking to people that I don't know, because I'm like, and at the same time, but it's really fun, because we have so much in common, that you just end up talking about things that are in common. So I really appreciate you being on.
Thank you for reaching out to me as well, because just speaking to you now, I already feel like I know you. And there was a few things there that I mentioned that you totally got. That's great.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Oh. Well, if you're ever out west, you gotta look me up for sure. And the next time in Florida, I will definitely let you know.
Out to the Everglades.
Okay. I'm excited for it.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria.
Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.